really, the question that we try to lead people to isn't what can I do? It's what else can I do? Because if I say children, hungry, schools, Calgary in the same sentence, regardless of the order, I can get people to volunteer.
Yeah.
It's moving them to the next step. And the next step for us is when they ask, what else can I do? We're moving them down that line for them to recognize that it's up to them. And that's the approach that we have taken, is that we keep continually moving the responsibility for feeding hungry kids away from our organization. We don't want to build an empire, we want to build a solution. And the solution for us isn't government, isn't charity, it is people taking care of kids in the neighborhood where they live.
Now, when you say move them down the line and they say, what can I do next? Do you answer that question, help them answer that question?
Yeah.
By providing a discrete, like, this is the kind of project we want to move for? Can you help us in that direction? Like, do you provide structure to it?
So we provide structure in the sense that we try not to be prescriptive. So we try not to create a box that people need to fit into. We try to be descriptive about what others have done in response to this question.
Yeah.
So if we were going to be prescriptive, we might say we need to build a kitchen just like this and do everything that we do just the way we do it, and we just pass our DNA along and create mini-me's. That's not what we want to do. We're descriptive, and we say, well, there's a church in the Northeast that has brought volunteers from their congregation together, and they've raised their own funds, and they're now feeding 80 children in their neighborhood, most of those being fed in schools at lunch. But they saw a need that was different than the one that we saw, and they're able to feed kids after school in a program that they created as a response to the proximity and context that they were able to see because they were closer. Nobody trusts organizations, but everyone trusts people. And relationship isn't with organizations, it's with people. And
yeah.
so our greatest goal and our biggest job is to find ways to create proximity between potential volunteers and donors with people who need that service, and then allow them to understand the context that they both have. And then to the response to your question, and then help them find a way that is appropriate for both of them to solve this issue.
Yeah.
Because if there are 3,000 children in the city who are hungry every day, or go higher and say 10,000, there may be 10,000 as yet unimagined solutions to that problem, because there are 300,000 kids in this city, and I would suggest that there's 100,000 different ways that they're being fed.
Yeah.
And this is because if we can find a way to create proximity and allow context to be understood, the as yet unimagined and appropriate solution will be found. We are eternal optimists. We live in a world where other charities are opening their hands and begging for volunteers and financial resources. Yet our organization lives in a world of abundance, where we have more volunteers than we can possibly use. So we're sitting here in July and getting requests every day for corporate groups to come and volunteer with us, and we are booking into 2012. There's 10 more openings between now and the end of the year that we can take volunteers. All the rest are booked.
Yeah.
So what kind of abundance does that speak to? We are good stewards of resources, and we believe good stewards of human resources. So we create a positive volunteer experience. We would describe it as make a difference volunteer experience. You arrive here at 7:45 in the morning, and there are 14 empty stainless steel tables, and 90 minutes later, up to 1,800 lunches are going out to feed 1,800 kids. Most people at that moment gasp a little bit because they've never done anything in that short period of time that made that big a difference. There's a sign on the wall, on the door, that will say, today we fed this many kids. And we always get the group to stand and take a picture. And if I'm taking the picture, I say, today you fed 1,751 kids, and there's 6 of you. I'm not good with math, but how many did each of you feed? And I want them to go away with that realization that that short contribution, tiny commitment in many ways, made a big difference in the lives of children in the city. Each of those lunches not only fills the belly, but it improves the attendance, the attention, the academic performance, the behavior. But we're told recently by teachers that each of those lunches brings love to those children that's missing in their lives. I mean, this isn't meant to be miraculous. This is an everyday action that any one of us can take, right? That this is making a simple lunch for a child, yet all of those results are achieved. And the one that we didn't recognize what happened, and the one that we now feel responsible for cultivating, is that it changes the lives of those people whose hands and hearts made those lunches. We get requests from people on a daily basis who have been in our kitchen, and they call us from their workplace. They've gone back to work, and a couple of days later they call and talk to Tanya or I, and they say, I'm 42 years old. I was told that if I got a good education, found somebody I loved and got married and had 2.2 children and 2 cars and a big house, that I'd be happy. Did it, got it, not. I have no purpose in my life. And so we don't guide them back to our kitchen, we guide them to a place of passion. What are you passionate about? And let's help you find a way that can become your vocation, and what you do every day is your avocation. And then if we can melt the two together, all the better. But it might be that they're a geologist who's working 70 hours a week and providing all of those things that they thought were necessary, but they've lost a purpose, and all that they need to do is coach their child's soccer team to find that application purpose, that calling piece. So that's a surprising revelation for a small organization, and we are small. With 3.6 full-time equivalent staff and a budget of slightly under $500,000, in the scale across the city, we would be in the bottom 20% in those measurements. But we feed 650,000 lunches to kids, and have 3,000 volunteers and 2,000 donors who support the work that we do. And there is only one organization that has more volunteers than us in the city that consistently use them in this kind of make a difference, purposeful way. So we think that we punch way above our weight. Part of the reason that we continue to find ways to keep our lunch costs down is to be good stewards of the financial resources. But I also believe, this is my philosophy, I also believe that there's a threshold. I'm not sure what the financial threshold is. There's a threshold where it becomes necessary to use financial resources to support the infrastructure of the organization.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure what that threshold is, but I know that as soon as you need to hire a human resources manager, you're on that path. I'm not saying you're there yet, but as soon as you need a human resources manager, you've created a structure that requires you to use financial resources that were given to support a cause that are now being used to support an organization. So we are diligent about, when I say that we are about creating solutions, not about creating an empire, I know that I'm being critical of other organizations.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm okay with that, because I want them to step back and say, I want them to step back and say, how much of what we do is about creating an empire? And not in a crass, intentional, motivated for self-interest way, but that is what it has evolved to.
Yeah.
So we are always conscious, and sometimes overly cautious. There are days that I wonder whether we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but we would be more efficient in achieving our mission if we would hire another full-time person. And so we constantly are evaluating that piece.
So are you taking steps to go towards that?
Well, we're actually taking steps to go the other way. So our goal would be a year. So in June of 2010, of the 3,000 lunches that were produced every day, so a year ago June, 1,800 were made in this kitchen, and 1,200 were made by partners. And June this year, 1,800 were made by partners, and 1,200 were made here. So we're actually we've tipped where more of the need is being met by community, in community, than by the organization. Our goal would be that someday there will be no need for this downtown kitchen, because whatever the aggregate need, 3,000 or 5,000 or over 1,000 lunches that are needed by children in the city is being met in community, and that we would maybe still exist, but have no need for this kitchen. We may be a resource for those 100 or 150 partners in the community of feeding kids to ensure that the lunches are still nutritious and that they're meeting safe food handling, and that they're continuing to build community partnerships, which is a hard piece for people to move through. We see ourselves as moving this issue from an agency-driven solution to a community-driven solution.
So, from the sounds of it, you have a very, very well thought out plan. How are you transposing that to your partners so that they keep the same ideals?
So there's two ways that we could do that. Lori Groffman's book, Starfish and the Spider, talks about both of them. So the traditional method would be to create a chapter of brown bagging, a mini me, 100 of them throughout the city, and a handbook, and a set of rules, and a reporting structure. And that's the Spider way of doing it. The problem with the Spider is that you can take off a leg of the spider and it still exists, but if you chop off the head, the spider dies. The starfish mentality, which is what the approach that we've taken, is that if you chop off a leg of a starfish and put it back into the environment, it grows another starfish. It carries the DNA of the original starfish. So we leave enough of our DNA with our partners. So an example of that is that we ensure that all of our community partners are trained in Alberta Health Services safe food handling to ensure that the lunches will be made in a safe kitchen. They all have come through our kitchen and seen how the practical, how we do this. They recognize that you can do lunches in a number of different ways, but to achieve the goals that we've set out, being nutritious is really important. So they've signed on to that. The most important piece, though, is how we assure that how we transpose our values to them, is that anyone who puts their hand up and says, we call it asking for permission, they put their hand up and say, we think we can do this.
Yeah.
They've already demonstrated to us the most important characteristic, the initiative to say, I want to help take care of these kids. Anyone who will do that, anyone who will step forward and say, please give us permission to take care of kids, will always do the best that we can. Will always exceed the expectations. Our lunches, when we're doing, out of one kitchen, doing 1,200 to 1,800 lunches, it's assembly line. The lunches are completely nutritious. The lunches meet the dietary and religious restrictions of children who have them. There's a variety of offering throughout the weekend, and they are tasty and palatable.
Yeah.
But when our partners do this and they're doing lunches for 20, their lunches are delivered on fresh baked buns with baking that was made the night before, with fruit that was chosen specifically for those 20 kids. When you're doing 20 lunches, you can put a lot more love into the lunches. In the same way that a mother puts way more love into her lunches than we're able to do when we're doing 1,890 minutes.
So I can see why you want to move to that smaller partnership, because you are getting just a better quality meal, which is what your desire is to get a good quality meal to kids.
And we are inspiring community to understand that we are responsible together to ensure that kids are receiving the best opportunities. This isn't a government responsibility. That's why we don't accept government funding. We believe that child nutrition and many other social issues could be solved if we would actually push government out of this arena and understand that it's about accepting responsibility, not delegating responsibility. So we use a lot of language around make it your problem, it's up to you. We don't ask anyone to do everything, but we ask everyone to do something.
Yeah.
It's that approach. And we try to walk that every day. We try not to be like the organizational agency example of